There's a randomized clinical trial suggesting that switching to a soy-supplemented vegan diet cuts severe hot flashes significantly. And the part that surprised researchers is that it didn't actually matter how processed the plant foods were. Swap out the animal products, and the benefits showed up either way. That finding is a little inconvenient for the clean eating crowd, and worth talking about.
Hi there, I'm Tony Lee, and this is Hot Flasher, your daily menopause podcast that serves up fresh news, research, and wellness tips. I've built a daily news pipeline to find the latest on women's health and menopause research. Allow me to introduce my co-host, Nikki, who handles the headlines. Take it away, Nikki.
Thanks, Tony. We've got a good one to close out the week. It's Friday, which means we're keeping it a little lighter today. Things you can actually do something with over the weekend, or at least think about on your walk tomorrow morning. 3 items, all in the lifestyle and research lane, and one of them is going to mildly annoy the clean eating corner of Wellness Instagram, which I'm not sorry about. Let's start with the fitness piece, because it's Friday, and I think we all need a practical win to walk into the weekend with. Women's Health ran something this week from a menopause-specialist personal trainer, a list of her 5 non-negotiable habits for building muscle in your 50s. Now, I'll be upfront. 5 non-negotiables in a Women's Health headline is not exactly a peer-reviewed methods section, but the substance here is solid and it lines up with what the evidence actually supports, so it's worth going through. The first one, and she's emphatic about this: protein. Not as an afterthought, not split evenly across 3 small servings, enough protein distributed across the day to actually give your muscles something to work with. Research consistently points to somewhere in the range of 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight per day for women in midlife who are training. That's higher than what most women have been told their whole lives, and it matters more after menopause because estrogen has been doing some quiet background work on muscle protein synthesis that it's no longer doing. Second, progressive overload. This one sounds technical, but it's simple. You have to keep giving your muscles a reason to adapt. That means gradually increasing the challenge over time, whether that's more weight, more reps, less rest. Your muscles are not going to change in response to the same workout you've been doing for 6 months. The body is extremely good at getting comfortable. Third is sleep, which she lists as non-negotiable for muscle recovery. And she's right. You don't build muscle during the workout. You build it during recovery, and recovery is largely sleep. Hot flashes wrecking your sleep at 3 a.m. are not just a quality of life issue. They are directly interfering with your body's ability to rebuild from training. If you're working hard in the gym and sleeping terribly, you're fighting yourself. The other 2 habits she lists are consistency over intensity, meaning showing up regularly matters more than occasional heroic effort, and managing stress, specifically because cortisol in chronic elevation breaks down muscle tissue. Not a new idea, but worth hearing again. What I appreciate about this list is what's not on it. No expensive supplements, no hormone optimization protocols you found on a biohacker's Substack. The basics, applied consistently, are doing most of the work. That's not a sexy sell, but it's what the evidence keeps pointing to. The blood pressure study is the one I want to spend a bit more time on because I think cardiovascular risk in menopause gets discussed in fairly narrow terms. Heart attacks, estrogen, the timing of HRT, and this study is looking at something more granular. Published in August 2026 in a longitudinal cohort design, the Yang et al. Study tracked blood pressure trajectories across the menopause transition, not just a before and after snapshot. Actual trajectories over time with attention to where in the transition the changes were happening. And what they found is that blood pressure increases are most pronounced in the late perimenopausal and early postmenopausal window. This matters because the conventional framing tends to chalk up rising blood pressure in midlife to aging. You're in your 50s, blood pressure goes up, that's what happens. But a study that tracks women across the transition, rather than just comparing 45-year-olds to 60-year-olds, can actually tease apart how much of that shift is tied to the hormonal transition itself versus just the accumulation of years. And this one suggests the menopause transition is doing something real and specific to blood pressure, not just serving as a backdrop to normal aging. The practical takeaway is pretty direct. If you haven't had a blood pressure check recently and you're in perimenopause or early postmenopause, get one. Not because something is definitely wrong, but because this is a window where changes can happen quietly. And catching a trend early gives you options, the kind of data your doctor can contextualize with a tool like open evidence, where they be looking at longitudinal cardiovascular evidence rather than just your last reading. I'll add, the study design matters here. Longitudinal cohort studies can establish associations and track patterns over time, but they can't prove causation. What they can do is point researchers toward the right questions. And the right question this study raises, whether the timing of intervention, including hormone therapy, matters specifically for blood pressure trajectories, is one that deserves a proper follow-up trial. Okay, the vegan diet and hot flashes study is the one that earned the hook this week, so let's get into it. This is a secondary analysis of a randomized clinical trial published in the NAMS journal, Menopause. The original trial put postmenopausal women on a soy-supplemented vegan diet and found significant reductions in severe hot flashes. This secondary analysis was asking a more specific question: does it matter how processed the plant foods are? And the finding is, not really. Women who replaced animal foods with plant foods saw significant weight loss and a reduction in severe hot flashes, whether those plant foods were minimally processed or ultra-processed. The key variable appears to be swapping out the animal products, not whether your plant foods came from a farmer's market or a freezer bag. I want to be precise about what this is and isn't. It's a secondary analysis of a clinical trial, which is a respectable level of evidence, more rigorous than an observational study, but also not the primary endpoint the trial was powered to test. The sample is postmenopausal women specifically, and the diet involved soy supplementation, so you can't isolate which piece of the vegan shift. Less saturated fat, more phytoestrogens from the soy, lower caloric density, the weight loss itself is actually driving the hot flash reduction. Probably a combination. But here's where I'll take a position. The ultra-processed framing is worth pushing back on. There is a loud and confident voice in wellness spaces right now, insisting that ultra-processed food is the root of essentially all modern health problems. Some of that concern is legitimate, and there's good research on certain outcomes. But this study adds to a pattern of findings, suggesting the food matrix question is more complicated than processed bad, whole good. When you change the macronutrient profile, the fat sources, the phytoestrogen content, and the overall dietary pattern at once. How processed was it may not be the most important variable. That doesn't mean you should eat processed food by the shopping cart. It means the relationship between food, hormones, and symptoms is not as simple as the clean eating framework suggests. And for women who feel like they're failing because they can't maintain a perfectly whole foods diet, this study is telling them something worth hearing. The weight loss component is also worth noting plainly. Adipose tissue produces estrone, a form of estrogen, and body fat is associated with more frequent and severe hot flashes through several mechanisms. The weight loss in this trial was significant, and some portion of the hot flash reduction may be travelling through that route. That's not a reason to dismiss the finding. It's a reason to understand it accurately. Thanks for spending the week with us. If you're not subscribed yet, find Hot Flasher on whatever app you're using right now and hit that button. It's the best way to make sure Monday's episode lands in your feed automatically. Have a good weekend, and I'll see you Monday.
That's our week. Thanks for listening to Hot Flasher. We'll be back on Monday. Have a great weekend, everyone.